Let's bring in Russ Dorsey, who's been busy putting all this stuff out on social media.
It's still working.
And look at him. Russ, take a break from the phone. My God, you're like my kids. I know it's your business. How you doing, man? Good morning. Tell us about this Walker Buehler deal, because Harold and I are both a little surprised by this one.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? As you've seen, the market has been moving over the last 12 hours or so. And so after Sean Manaea goes back to the New York Mets, they were a team that we were interested in Walker Buehler. But Walker Buehler gets a one-year, $21.05 million deal from the Boston Red Sox. He now becomes the veteran in a very young rotation. And I think when you look at what Walker Buehler brings to the table, what he was able to do in that postseason run, that World Series run for the Los Angeles Dodgers, you're talking about a guy coming off of double Tommy John surgery that pitched his best down the stretch for the Los Angeles Dodgers en route to a second World Series title. So now he becomes the veteran presence in that rotation, a guy that will now be able to pitch a full healthy season for the first time in a while and then jump back into the market next winter.
Well, Russ, do you know why a one-year deal was out there for Walker and not more?
I think there were a lot of teams in discussion on Walker for multi-year deals. And I think when you look at the situation for him going to Boston, a place where he can win, they're expected to be in contention in that AL East. As a guy that likes to compete, I think that he looks at it as a really good situation and fit for him. And I think, with Alex Cora, he loves those grindy type guys that aren't afraid to put it out all on the line. And that's something we've seen from Walker Buehler from the time when he was a young fireballer to now what you saw when he saved, that last game of the World Series for the Dodgers. And I think when you look at, what Walker is going to be able to do there, you're talking about a guy who, if you look at the history of Major League Baseball, has the fourth lowest ERA in World Series history. So this is a guy that isn't afraid of the big moments, isn't afraid to pitch in a big market. And I think, the Red Sox, with a new look rotation, obviously you go out and get Garrett Crochet, and they want Walker Buehler to be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think it's real interesting, too, why he was attractive to the Red Sox is not surprising, but I think it's also their philosophy. We saw him throw a lot of breaking balls. This wasn't Walker Buehler, here's my fastball, I'm challenging you, like we saw for the most part of his career. He was a breaking ball pitcher, particularly even in the postseason in the World Series. And if you look at what the Red Sox did with their staff, they threw a ton of breaking pitches.
That's right. And if Lucas Giolito comes back healthy, like you got a veteran kind of ready-made group there. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other signings we learned of over the weekend, Russ. Jock Peterson with the Rangers on a one-year deal. Texas is putting together a really deep lineup here. And I think regardless of where Alex Bregman might land, I'm going to call the Rangers the best lineup in the American League West. Talk about the Peterson signing.
Especially if they stay healthy, maybe. And I think Jock Peterson, for me, we talk about Soto, and we talk about Willie Adames and all these guys, great players. Jock might be the best value on this year's market outside of a guy like Christian Walker. Jock had a career year last year in Arizona, and I don't know how many people were watching the D-backs because they weren't making a run to the World Series last year, but Jock had a fantastic year, and it was the first year of his career where he was solely a designated hitter. And that's something that Jock didn't necessarily love early in his career. I remember covering him for the Chicago Cubs. He loved being out in the outfield, still playing center field, even though people wanted to move him to a corner. And he found his stride in Arizona. And so I think you put him in that lineup there, like that's balance down there in Texas for Bruce Bochy. And I think hitting in that ballpark, I think early on people were like, oh man, that's a cavern, right? It's a big place to swing the bat. But now I think guys have shown that you can really swing the bat well down there in Texas. So
yeah,
I really like this move for the Rangers.
I'm with you. That's
I misspoke. Two-year deal for Jock. Nice money too at $37 million. So we've covered the activity. Jock Peterson, Jesus Luzardo, Sean Manaea. Let's talk a little bit about the inactives, the inactivity. We're not talking about an NFL roster at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. The Orioles have been surprisingly non-involved in a lot of this stuff. Maybe they've been involved and swung and missed. Maybe there's still a bunch coming. What do you make of what Baltimore has done or not done so far?
I'm a little surprised in Baltimore, guys. Like, you talk about a team with, losing Corbin Burns potentially and some of the injuries that they've had in their rotation. And it's always seemed like a team like, all right, man, if they get some solidified starting pitching, this is a team that is ready to go, because we know what they have in terms of their young position players, whether that's Jackson Holiday or Adley Rutschman or Gunnar Henderson, who was a finalist for the MVP award last year, and then they go sign Tyler O'Neill. But what this team really needs is starting pitching. And the one thing I'm afraid of with the Baltimore Orioles is you're not guaranteed a window, right? Like, just because you draft these guys and develop them into young studs and they're on the top prospect list and they come to the big leagues and we're really excited about what they can be, and some of those guys develop into MVP caliber players like Gunnar Henderson, you got to continue to add to that, because we've seen teams around the big leagues in years past that said, you know what? It's our time. And then they were in and out of that window really quickly. I look at the Chicago White Sox from a couple of years ago, who had the best farm system in baseball. They had all these young studs, and then it was over. So I think the thing with the Orioles, for me, with a new ownership group, you feel like they would have money to spend, and like they're not the new kids on the block anymore. Now everybody knows what to expect out of the Baltimore Orioles, and in a division that is still going to be tough to compete in. You see the Red Sox trying to get better. The Yankees have, after losing Juan Soto, they've done a lot to pivot and be a better team next year. So I'm a little surprised in Baltimore.
Russ, we appreciate you this morning, man. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and get back on the phone. There's more stuff to chase down. Just make sure if it happens.
Merry Christmas, guys.
If it happens, it's after 1 p.m. Eastern. There you go. Russ Dorsey with us.
100%. Got you.
Thank you, Russ.